In a galaxy fraught with tension, Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn is no stranger to the whispers of the Force, but the disturbance he senses is unlike any he's felt before. As a master of the Force and a maverick within the Jedi Order, Qui-Gon has always questioned the rigid rules that govern his kind. But nothing has prepared him for the discovery of two brothers, Anakin and Revan Skywalker, whose destinies intertwine with the very fabric of the Force. Revan, a self-taught Force user hardened by years of slavery, carries with him a power that threatens to reshape the future of the Jedi and Sith alike. His cynical yet protective nature stands in stark contrast to his younger brother, Anakin, whose innocence shines through amidst the darkness of their shared past. As Qui-Gon navigates the labyrinth of Tatooine's lawless underbelly, the bonds between these siblings grow, revealing truths about their past and dreams of a future far greater than they could imagine. With Padmé, the Queen's handmaiden, caught between duty and an unexpected connection to Revan, the stage is set for a new prophecy to emerge in the Jedi never foresaw. With tension building in the Force and the fate of the galaxy at stake, Qui-Gon must decide whether to follow the Jedi Code or the call of destiny that beckons him toward Revan. Qui-Gon Jinn, a Jedi Master, and his Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi were barely escaping the deadly grip of the Trade Federation's blockade on Naboo when they found themselves stranded on the desert planet of Tatooine. The Federation had threatened to destroy the peaceful people of Naboo unless the Queen surrendered her throne, but two Jedi were more than they bargained for. After surviving an intense battle, including a direct hit to their ship's hyperdrive, Qui-Gon and his team, including the quirky Gungan Jar Jar Binks, found themselves stuck on Tatooine. With a damaged ship and the Federation hot on their tail, they had no choice but to make the best of the situation. But fate had something else in store. Qui-Gon felt the pull of the Force guiding him to a pair of brothers, slaves under the ruthless Watto. One of them, a gifted young boy named Anakin, was already a beacon of potential. But it was his older brother, Revan, a self-taught Force user whose raw power and untapped legacy caught Qui-Gon's attention. As tensions escalated, a prophecy began to stir, one that could change the course of the galaxy. The Jedi Master now faced a decision. The path of duty or the deeper, more mysterious calling of the Force. Under the blazing suns of a desert world, a trio marched toward the nearest settlement, chasing the hope of a cheap hyperdrive and a way off the planet. Their mission was simple: get the Queen to safety and warn the Council of rising danger. But a sudden voice from behind shattered their focus. A winded guard arrived, dragging with him a sharp-eyed girl in dusty clothes. Orders from above, she was to join the group. The Jedi Master frowned, his patience fraying in the heat. "No more commands today," he snapped, but the reply cut deeper. "The Queen wishes it. The mission just got a whole lot more complicated." Panaka interrupted with a glare, his voice sharp as he responded to the Jedi's refusal of the Queen's wishes. "She insists on learning about this planet and its people." Padmé stepped forward, standing directly before the aging Jedi Master. "I've been trained in self-defense by the best the Queen could provide, and I speak multiple languages, which could be crucial for our mission, Master." Qui-Gon hesitated, wanting to refuse both the captain and Padmé, fearing the dangers of the settlement would only escalate with a young girl involved. His mind raced with dark thoughts. What could happen to her in such a lawless place? Yet something stopped him. It wasn't just the strength in her eyes, though that intrigued him. No, it was the unmistakable Force presence that flowed through her, powerful despite her apparent lack of training. How had someone like Padmé remained undiscovered by the Jedi, especially given her life in Republic space? The Jedi could sense that something was off. Despite the galaxy's political webs, they had most certainly encountered her, but no one dared anger her family. The truth was clear to him. The handmaiden standing before him wasn't just any servant, it was the real Queen Amidala, the one who hid behind her decoy. She could blend in with her handmaidens to evade assassins, but she couldn't hide from the Forcenaut without proper training. Panaka, nearly pleading, urged the Jedi Master to go with the Queen's request, a request that Qui-Gon, despite his reservations, couldn't refuse. "This is a bad idea," he muttered, but he knew the stakes were too high to argue. "You can come," he finally said, his disapproval clear. As they journeyed to Mos Espa, Qui-Gon felt a strange tremor in the Force feint, vanishing as soon as he tried to focus on it, leaving him frowning. Something was out there, but it remained just beyond his grasp. As the group made their way into the heart of Mos Espa, Qui-Gon couldn't help but warn Padmé of the dangers lurking in the shadows. Tatooine, a harsh and unforgiving world, was under the control of a ruthless crime syndicate led by Jabba the Hutt. Qui-Gon shared his knowledge with Padmé, emphasizing that a young girl like her would fetch a high price in the black market, especially if her royal identity was discovered. "This isn't the Republic," he told her sharply, cutting off her naive thoughts. "This is Jabba's world, and everyone here knows it." As they walked through the crowded streets, Qui-Gon reflected on his past visit to this lawless planet. Slavery still existed here, a grim reality that filled Padmé with disbelief. Qui-Gon's words were firm: Tatooine belongs to the Hutt Syndicate, not the Jawas or the Tusken Raiders. The world was harsh, controlled by those who dealt in the darkest of trades, and Qui-Gon knew all too well that survival in such a place meant submitting to the will of Jabba and his ilk. "Why isn't the Jedi doing something about it? Aren't you supposed to keep the peace?" she whispered to the Jedi Master. "If you know what's happening to these people day in and day out, why hasn't anything been done to help them?" The Jedi Master sighed, replying, "As you said, we're peacekeepers, not soldiers, and the Republic can hardly defend its own borders. We simply don't have the resources to fight against all the criminal organizations in the Outer Rim." He quickly changed the subject, suggesting they try one of the smaller dealerships, hoping for less attention. Qui-Gon's wisdom settled in as he mentioned less attention that way, receiving a small nod from her, though her eyes told him the conversation was far from over. As they entered a small shop, they were greeted by a pudgy creature that flew into their faces, sending Padmé scrambling to cover her nose against the creature's foul stench. "Why isn't the Jedi doing something about it? Aren't you supposed to keep the peace?" she whispered to the Jedi Master. "If you know what's happening to these people day in and day out, why hasn't anything been done to help them?" The Jedi Master sighed, replying, "As you said, we're peacekeepers, not soldiers, and the Republic can hardly defend its own borders. We simply don't have the resources to fight against all the criminal organizations in the Outer Rim." He quickly changed the subject, suggesting they try one of the smaller dealerships, hoping for less attention. Qui-Gon's wisdom settled in as he mentioned less attention that way, receiving a small nod from her, though her eyes told him the conversation was far from over. As they entered a small shop, they were greeted by a pudgy creature that flew into their faces, sending Padmé scrambling to cover her nose against the creature's foul stench. "Hi, Chubadanaga," the blue creature snapped, eyes narrowing as he demanded to know why they had entered his store. The foul stench that accompanied his words made Padmé gag. "I need parts for a J-Type 3, 27 Nubian," Qui-Gon answered, remaining composed despite the less-than welcoming greeting from the pudgy Toydarian. At that, the creature's attitude shifted instantly, his snout curling into a toothy grin, producing an odd, smacking noise. "Nubian, you say?" "Yes, we have lots of spare parts for that." His eyes swept over the group, finally landing on the lone Gungan. "What's this?" he asked, his tone tinged with curiosity. "Vit lai le twai noi dung sao bang ting mod kak hup dern, fong kak ton jiao bian, gay ta ma. Kothin bing learn zai thik valin hair kak sir kiern thirte, ko te trick dern tem kak ko fu her nu trong king tang, ngui noi ting de zai thik chovan day. Harn she kak tu, kum tu vi farm ching sak YouTube. Lord ba kak ten ring, chi tit kung fu her vi kick ban guk. Chi doing yat one lur charn kit qua to chat GPT. Trala kit qua trong one dwarn van du nyat. Kung swung dong, kung gait do dong. Abilities such as flight or invisibility, they might also cast love spells. Or my personal favorite, help the magician find buried treasure. And mark my words, one of these days I'll make a video on treasure hunting with demons. That being said, the question of what specific powers the 12 kings and dukes of hell have to offer. The magician leads us to the third book of the grimoire, and arguably the most convoluted book of them all. As you can see, this final section of the book contains a vast number of cryptic letter puzzles, better known as magic squares. These magic squares are talismans, meaning that each one has been imbued with sacred magic. The puzzles themselves must be solved in order to activate the magic, which we now understand is largely powered by demons. They also must be solved only after the magician successfully completes the A. Bremelin operation. Otherwise, they simply won't work the demonic powers a magician can take advantage of are clearly listed, and each one is specific to its own magic square. As expected, there's a lot of standard spells, such as those to heal illnesses, tell the future, read minds, acquire vast, viet lai le twai nor dung sao bang ting aing mod kek hup dern, fong kek ton jiao bi un, gay ta ma, kotham bing learn, zai thik, valin hair kek sir kiern thirte. caught they tricked their them kak kofu herb neutron king tang nui noiting de zai picture one day. Harn shake actu, kum de vi fam ching sak YouTube. Larba kakten ring, chi did kung fu herb kit banga. Chi dunyet one lur charn kit kwa to chat GPT. Trala kit kwa trong one dwarn van dunyet. Kong swung dong, Kong gauge do dong. Abram land operation, which he gives us 6 months. All other Bremlin manuscripts specify 18 months, and there are more details added that make these 18 months even more complex if the operation wasn't already challenging enough. The second problem is that his Abramon oil recipe was incorrect. The German manuscripts, which are the oldest and most authoritative present, a recipe almost identical to the one described in the Bible for holy anointing oil Mather's version replaces the herb calamus with glandul and forgets he spiced cassia entirely. The third problem is that the German manuscripts have 251 magic squares, and Mather's version only has 242. Worse yet, 2/3 of Mather squares are not completely filled in, and many of those that are filled in are painfully incorrect with words that are misspelled and out of order, and in such disagreement with the other existing manuscripts that it really makes you wonder if the French translator needed a new pair of glasses. The fourth problem, and perhaps the most significant, is that Mather's version is missing an entire book. This missing book is meant to be book number 2 following right after the narrative of book 1, so what this additional Revan Skywalker, dressed in sleeveless black robes, stood with his muscular arms exposed, wrapped in white cloths, looking serious, while his younger brother, Anakin, wore a carefree expression. The Toydarian, Watto, snapped at them, especially Revan, demanding to know why they were late. Revan coolly responded, explaining that Anakin had helped him salvage an engine from an old swoop bike, warning Watto that it could affect his profit. Watto's anger grew, but Revan wasn't intimidated. "You're lucky you're good at your job," Watto snarled, irritated by the disrespect. Revan and Anakin exchanged glaring looks, and though Watto tried to maintain control, the tension between them was undeniable. "Just watch the store until I get back," Watto ordered, though the defiance from the brothers lingered in the air. Anakin quickly responded, "Of course," before the older boy Revan could speak up, realizing they'd both regret their words. Watto nodded toward Anakin, his eyes cold, as he left with Qui-Gon trailing behind. "Sleemo," the older boy muttered, his anger clear as he spat in Huttese. He only relaxed when he noticed Anakin looking at him with concern. "Don't anger Watto, Rev," Anakin warned, his voice filled with worry. Revan exhaled deeply. "I won't let that slob get the upper hand on you," he retorted. "We're the reason he even has a business." He walked toward the work counter, his fingers tracing the exposed wires of an old engine as the tension between them hung in the air. "Is this conversation helpful so far?" "Man, the counter, Ani. I'll see if I can get this old girl working." The young man called out to his brother, who promptly jumped up and kept an eye on a pretty girl who wandered around the shop. The girl hummed softly to herself, casually browsing, though she didn't expect to find anything she needed. She figured, though, the people around here would be willing to pay a fortune for it or maybe even kill for it if what she'd heard was true. While she took a glance at the selection, a strange sensation prickled up her spine, causing her to shiver. Looking over her shoulder, she caught the blonde-haired boy quickly looking away, pretending he hadn't been staring. But she knew better. From the corner of her eye, she saw him glance back at her. The other boy nearby chuckled quietly. The one closer to her age seemed absorbed in his work on an engine. She turned back to her browsing, passing time as she waited for her companion to return from his errand. "Are you an angel?" the boy asked suddenly. She heard a soft voice and turned to find a blonde-haired boy staring at her. "Pardon?" she asked, confused, unsure if she had heard him right. "An angel?" he replied, his eyes sparkling with wonder. "I heard the pilots in the cantina talk about them. They live on the moons of Ego, I think. They're said to be good, kind, so beautiful they make even the toughest pirates cry like children." He explained, only to be met with a puzzled stare. "I've never heard of angels before," she admitted, still trying to piece it all together. Padmé confided in the blonde boy, "You must be one, but you don't even know it." Anakin, with a shy smile, responded, unknowingly earning a sly smirk from the raven-haired teen he's brother had quite the charm with the ladies. "You're funny. How do you know all this?" Padmé asked, her laugh making Anakin's heart skip a beat. "I listen to traders and star pilots at the bar. I'm a pilot, you know. One day I'll fly my mom, my brother, and myself away from here, away from Watto and Jabba. We'll find a new place to live," he declared. "You're a pilot?" Padmé raised a brow, clearly skeptical. Deep down, she wondered if he could even see past the dashboard. Revan Skywalker was grinning, full of pride as he casually dropped, "All my life." His voice carried the weight of someone who'd been there forever. Padmé, puzzled, asked, "How long have you been here?" His response was a grunt, followed by a cryptic, "Since I was very little, don't really remember how old." 3. He then spoke again, this time revealing something deeper. "Yeah, but I was too young to remember. But I know that my mom and Rev belonged to Gardulla the Hutt until she lost us to Watto in a bet." Padmé's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're a slave?" she asked, the words heavy in her mouth. The innocence of a child like Anakin being tied to such a life was almost too much to bear. A shadow crossed over the young boy's face. It wasn't just the word, but the way it was spoken, making him feel humiliated and dirty. "I'm a person, and my name is Revan," he said with defiance. "Take it easy, Ani." "She's not from here, so she doesn't know better," the raven-haired boy said, stepping up to his brother and placing a hand on his shoulder, the gesture that only he could do to calm him down. "Sorry about that. Little Ani doesn't like being called a slave, and I'd appreciate it if you'd refrain from doing so." He asked her kindly, but there was a hint of sharpness in his voice. It wasn't until she stood face to face with him that she noticed how striking his eyes were so unique. "Don't call me Little Annie, Rev," Anakin grumbled at his brother, getting a teasing smirk in response. "Well, Mom has always called you her little warrior," Revan teased, causing Anakin to blush as the true meaning of his name was revealed in front of the girl. With a nudge, Anakin pushed him for spilling the secret. "I'm just messing with you," Revan chuckled, enjoying his brother's flustered reaction. But then he paused, realizing he hadn't introduced himself. "Oh right, sorry, I'm Revan Skywalker. Meet my little brother," Revan said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Anakin, with a pout, muttered, "You're only a few years older, Revan." The two brothers, though sharing an unspoken bond, were both shaped by their harsh life under Watto's rule. Despite their difficult circumstances, Anakin couldn't imagine life without his older brother. Together, they made it through. Though they'd never known their fathers, their mother had always told them they didn't have one, and they assumed she'd separated from them before their births. It used to sadden Anakin knowing Revan was only his half-brother, but in the end, it didn't matter. They had each other, and that was everything. As their conversation was interrupted by Jar Jar's clumsiness with a small droid, Revan, eager to avoid Watto's wrath, did something Anakin had rarely seen. He reached out with his hand, pulling the droid into the air before deactivating it with a precise smack. The scene was a mix of chaos and power, a reminder of the brothers' unique connection to the Force. Revan grabbed the droid, preparing to tidy up the mess caused by their chaotic chase. "He's right, you know," Revan remarked to Padmé, who was still processing his actions. "About what?" she asked, genuinely curious. "You could be an angel," Revan replied with a sly smile before turning to help Anakin. The comment made Padmé's heart flutter. She wasn't sure why, but there was something about Revan's words that felt different from a child calling her an angel. It made her smile, cheeks flushing slightly. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon, growing increasingly frustrated with the mess of the past days, thought about their failed negotiations, battling droids, dealing with a demanding queen, and now finding themselves on Tatooine hunting for a crucial part for their ship. The Force had led them to this far from ideal situation, but Qui-Gon couldn't shake the feeling that something or some important was drawing them toward a destiny no one had expected. A long search guided by the Force brings him to the dusty edge of the galaxy, where two boys hidden in plain sight pulse with untrained power. He knows the rules, their age breaks them, but rules mean little when destiny knocks. The traitor scoffs at his offer, eyes gleaming with greed. Republic credits? Worthless out here. The Jedi's voice stays calm. His hand moves with quiet resolve. The Force answers, but the stubborn merchant doesn't flinch. Time is slipping. Hope is fragile. And the brothers, bound in chains yet brimming with light, may be the spark that reignites a prophecy lost. Qui-Gon raised his hand, using the Force to try to sway Watto's stubbornness. "Credits will do fine," he said again, his voice steady. But Watto wasn't having it. "No, they won't," he snapped back, eyes flashing with frustration. Qui-Gon repeated his words, his hand sweeping through the air, a calm but forceful gesture. "Credits will do fine," he stated once more. Watto, however, was unmoved, his anger rising as he retorted, "What do you think you're doing waving your hand around like that?" The Jedi's attempt at diplomacy faltered as Watto remained defiant, proving once again that not all negotiations could be won with words alone. "Do you like this personality?" Qui-Gon Jinn stood there, frustration rising as Watto jabbed a thin, bony finger at his chest. "What? You think you're some Jedi? Ha! I'm a Toydarian. Mind tricks don't work on me, only money. No money, no parts, no deal." His voice echoed in the harsh Tatooine heat. Qui-Gon, trying to calm his inner storm, turned and walked away, heading back towards the shop, where he saw the two boys tidying up a mess, clearly caused by none other than Jar Jar. Qui-Gon couldn't help but sense it. There was something deeper at play here, something in the Force, especially with the Skywalker's Revan, the older brother, was a mystery and a danger to the Jedi in ways they hadn't anticipated. As the dust of Mos Espa settled around him, the true gravity of his choices loomed closer, and he knew that Revan's destiny was bound to reshape everything. The group was leaving. "We're going," Qui-Gon commanded, striding toward the door with R2-D, 2 bleeping behind him and Jar Jar stumbling after, knocking over a few objects. Padmé felt an odd heaviness as she realized they were leaving too soon. She couldn't explain it, but something about Revan made her feel like he was a long-lost friend. "I'm glad to have met you, Revan." She smiled warmly, her cheeks flushing as she remembered Anakin was still in the room. "And you too, Anakin." Revan gave a big smile, his eyes gleaming with a strange mix of fondness and mystery. "I'm glad I met you both. I hope our paths cross again one day." He waved and Padmé returned the gesture with a soft smile. "Is this conversation helpful so far?" Revan simply nodded, his gaze indifferent as Padmé flashed him a smile before hurrying off to join the others. "She was nice." Anakin sighed, watching her go with a dreamy expression. "I guess," Revan replied with a shrug, his cynicism clear. Unlike his younger brother, he saw no reason to get Adashid, especially to people they'd likely never see again. "You seem to like her a lot. Should I tell Mum we're about to gain a daughter-in-law?" Revan teased, causing Anakin to flush red and shove him playfully. Just then, Watto flew over, landing on the counter with a huff. "Outlanders! They think just because we live out here away from everything that we know nothing." Revan fought the urge to make a biting remark. He knew better than to make things worse for them, especially when their lives were quite literally in his hands. The power to detonate their bombs lay with him, though he had no intention of testing that limit unless absolutely forced to. After leaving the shop, Qui-Gon was in a bad mood. Watto had been right. As much as he hated to admit it, no one had the T-14 hyperdrive generator, and they wouldn't accept Republic currency either. He should have realized that sooner. To make matters worse, their ship didn't have anything of value to trade. But what really bothered him were the two boys from the shop. The Force was guiding him toward them, particularly the older one. But it was impossible to ignore how strong the younger boy's presence in the Force was too. One of them shined brighter, though Qui-Gon couldn't figure out which. His thoughts were interrupted when Padmé nudged him to get his attention, pulling his gaze down to her. "Yes, can I help you?" the Jedi Master inquired, his voice calm yet curious as the young handmaiden Padmé glanced around, ensuring they were alone. "Your Jedi powers. You can lift things telekinetically, right?" she whispered, her words barely a breath. A raised brow from Qui-Gon followed this was an unusual question. "It's one of our most basic abilities," he responded, his tone measured. "What brought this up?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Padmé leaned in, sharing with Qui-Gon the two boys, Anakin and Revan Skywalker. Qui-Gon's mind raced, the name Revan echoing in his thoughts. He had heard it before, but it didn't quite fit into place. It didn't matter, not yet. Padmé continued, describing how Jar Jar had accidentally activated a droid, which ran amok until Revan, with a mere gesture, brought it to a halt. Qui-Gon paused, sensing something more to this boy. Self-trained, he mused? Or perhaps his parent? Someone connected to the Jedi Order? But Skywalker? I've never come across a Jedi by that name. His curiosity piqued. Qui-Gon knew he had to investigate further. Something ancient stirred in the Force, and this encounter was no coincidence. Do you like this personality? Qui-Gon Jinn couldn't shake the nagging thought that a Force-sensitive individual, especially one on the brink of falling to the dark side, was too dangerous to be left unchecked. His mind wandered back to his greatest failure, Xanatos. But just as his thoughts deepened, his attention was grabbed by the chaos unfolding before him. Jar Jar Binks, as usual, had managed to anger a menacing Doug, and the Gungan was now running for his life. Qui-Gon readied himself to step in, but then he noticed the two boys from the market, Revan and Anakin, appear to rescue him. Chesko, Sebulba, the blonde-haired boy, warned the Doug, while the raven-haired teen said something that instantly seemed to provoke the Doug further, his anger written all over his face. "What are they saying?" Padmé asked quietly, confused by the language and the tension mounting around them. Qui-Gon, with a hint of humor, warned that crossing paths with Sebulba and harming Jar Jar would lead to serious consequences. After all, Jar Jar was tied to the Republic's Senate. His words made the handmaidens smile at their cleverness. Once the danger passed, Anakin, with his usual brightness, joined the group, greeting them warmly. While Anakin thrived in meeting new people, his older brother Revan preferred solitude, his quiet nature, a contrast to Anakin's cheer. Anakin, though, couldn't quite explain the exhaustion he felt after long hours away from home. Revan and Anakin shared how close the Gungan came to becoming Doug food and suggested showing the group around their home Mos Eisley. With a few areas to avoid, especially with Jar Jar around, the group agreed to follow them through the streets, discovering the hidden corners of their life on Tatooine. Qui-Gon decided to follow the Skywalker brothers through the dusty streets of the town, knowing this would keep the Gungan out of trouble for the time being. His mind was focused, sensing the pull of the Force towards both boys. He stayed silent, observing them closely, gauging which of them he might take with him to Coruscant to train as a Jedi. Obi-Wan was already ready for the trials, but Qui-Gon felt a strong connection to one of these siblings, who could hold the key to an even greater destiny. The moment was tense, with unspoken thoughts and shifting fates. Qui-Gon followed the Skywalker brothers through Mos Espa's dusty streets, the younger one, Anakin, all smiles and sunshine, proudly pointing out markets, cantinas, and the infamous podracing arena, throwing love-struck glances at Padmé when he thought no one noticed. But Revan? Revan was a shadow in the Heat Island, sharp-eyed, wrapped in rough desert robes, and wary of every glance. While Anakin danced in the moment, Revan watched the world like it owed him answers. Qui-Gon saw it toothed tension in Revan's frame, the cold edge to his words, the way the Force trembled quietly around him. Padmé, curious and cautious, studied them both. The moment paused at a fruit stand run by Jira, a wrinkled vendor who lit up at Anakin's hug. The boy was warmth. The older one, though, was the storm on the horizon, watching, waiting, carrying something unspoken that Qui-Gon couldn't ignore. Jira gave him a warm smile before her gaze shifted to the other Skywalker. "Oh, hello, Revan," she said, her voice soft. "How are you today, dear?" "Surviving, Jira, but other than that, I'm fine," he replied, his voice carrying a weight of stoic resilience. "Aren't we all?" She answered with a gentle laugh. "Guess what?" Anakin's voice cut through the air, drawing everyone's attention. "I found that cooling unit I was looking for. It's pretty beat up, but with some care, I'll have it fixed in no time. That should help with the heat." Jira reached out, her wrinkled hand brushing against his pink cheek. "You're a fine boy, Annie," she murmured, her voice filled with tenderness. Anakin brushed off her compliment with a shrug, just doing what he believed was right because their mother always said the galaxy's real problem was that people stopped helping one another. "I'll take 5 pallies, Jira," he said, glancing at Padmé with a smile. "You'll like these." Digging into his pocket for his saved truggets, he fumbled and dropped one. Qui-Gon, standing nearby, stooped to pick it up just enough for the edge of his cloak to rise, revealing a lightsaber on his belt. Anakin's eyes widened in disbelief. The wind howled louder as Jira shivered, her voice creaking, "Gracious, my bones ache! There's a storm coming, boys!" "Get home, quick!" Crates toppled with the wind's fury, bursting open in a wet, mushy mess across the sand-covered street. As the dust cloud rolled closer, Anakin turned to Qui-Gon, sensing something deeper than just weather. "Do you have shelter?" he asked. The man gave a solemn nod. but the tension in the Force whispered of something greater brewing than just a storm. The winds howled as the desert sand whipped through the air, stinging their faces. "We'll head back to our ship. Thank you again, my young friend, for..." the middle-aged man began, but the teenager quickly cut in, his face twisted with urgency. "Is it far?" he asked. "It's on the city's outskirts," Padmé replied, her voice cutting through the wind, her arm blocking the sting of sand. "But you'll never make it before the storm reaches the city," Revan added coolly, his gaze scanning the horizon. "And even if you try, the Tusken Raiders will be waiting." Padmé turned back to him, confusion in her eyes. "Why worry about them?" she asked, her tone sharp, the sand clouding her vision. "They'll kill your old man, skin your friend, dismantle your droid for parts, and take you either as a slave or a trophy." Revan responded matter-of-factly. "What's the difference?" Padmé's voice faltered, and Qui-Gon placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his tone soft but grave. "It's better not to know." Padmé nodded slightly, the weight of his words sinking in as they faced the storm together, unsure of what awaited them. Revan's words rang out, cutting through the swirling storm. "But Revan's right!" Anakin yelled, looking to the others. "Sandstorms are no joke. Come with us. You can wait it out at our house. It's not far, and Mum won't mind." The wind howled as the sand clouded everything, and with no way to see, Anakin waved goodbye to Jira, yanked Padmé's hand, and pulled her along the streets. Behind them, the others followed as they raced through the dust-choked streets toward the hovel-like slave quarters. The stacked huts, small and cramped, stretched out before them. Inside, the smell of earth and hard life filled the air. "Mom, we're home!" Revan shouted, stepping through the door, shaking off the sand. Their mother, Shmi Skywalker, emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands, eyes widening at the unusual guest before her an alien, a sleek astromech, and a handsome stranger. She was a woman in her late 30s, with streaks of gray in her brown hair, soft features, and tan skin, standing just over 5 feet tall. Despite the worn rags that passed as clothes, her smile outshone the harsh suns of Tatooine, relieved that her sons had made it home. She hated that they had to serve Watto, but at least he gave them a roof over their heads and some pay. Still, no mother wanted her children to live in chains. Revan Skywalker, the older, brooding brother of Anakin, bears the weight of his troubled past and his mysterious connection to the Force. While Anakin remains innocent and full of wonder, Revan is shaped by years of hardship and silent rage, a stark contrast to his younger siblings' optimism. When Qui-Gon Jinn, the Jedi Master, arrives on Tatooine, he quickly senses something unique about Revan, a Force presence that doesn't fit the typical mold. Alongside Padmé, undercover on a mission, the two are drawn into the Skywalker's world, where Revan's latent power becomes harder to ignore. As his visions of a hidden prophecy begin to manifest, Qui-Gon realizes this young boy could be the key to a deeper mystery, one even the Jedi Council has overlooked. Between the harsh desert landscape and the tense relationships that brew in Shmi's home, the journey for parts and answers becomes more than just a fight for survival. It's a battle of destiny itself. As the storm rages outside, the group takes shelter in the humble home of the Skywalker. Anakin, eager to impress, reveals his ongoing project to build a droid, while Padmé, undercover, becomes increasingly drawn to Revan's enigmatic presence. The older Skywalker, scarred by years of control and burdened with strange visions, hides a power far greater than anyone could imagine. Amidst the whirlwind of destiny, Revan's hidden past begins to surface, stirring the Force in ways that even Qui-Gon can't ignore. With a powerful legacy simmering beneath the surface, the journey of these unlikely heroes takes an unexpected turn, where fate, family, and the Force intertwine in ways that could alter the very course of history. In a dimly lit room cluttered with tools and half-finished projects, Padmé's curiosity peaked as she followed Anakin toward his workspace. The room, more of a workshop than a bedroom, held 2 large tarps concealing unknown shapes. Anakin, eager to share, pulled one off, revealing a droid in progress, wires exposed, its body not yet complete. "Meet C-3PO," Anakin said proudly, explaining how he'd salvaged parts for months to build the droid, with a little help from his brother Revan on the wiring. "He's for Mum," Anakin added, his voice tinged with bashfulness at Padmé's impressed response. The scene spoke volumes about Anakin's hopeful spirit and Revan's silent dedication. As Padmé admired the droid, she couldn't help but notice the deeper layers of these brothers, each building, not just machines, but bridges between past and future destinies. "Want me to activate him so you can speak to him?" he asked, grinning as Padmé nodded with bright curiosity. With a flick, the protocol droid lit up and sat upright, turning its golden head toward them. "Greetings, I am C-3PO, human-cyborg relations. How may I serve you?" Padmé clapped in delight. "Oh, he's wonderful, Annie!" But 3PO's gaze shifted to the other workbench, his voice trembling. "He's not active, is he, Master Revan?" The room fell into a chilling silence. Revan didn't answer, only turned with a smirk that unsettled Padmé. She leaned in to whisper to Anakin, "Who's 3PO talking about?" Her voice barely audible, as if the stillness had swallowed her breath. Anakin muttered, eyes locked on the dormant bench. "Revan's droid." The handmaiden couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling when he muttered the word droid. It was as if the mere mention of it had conjured dread. "Is it like 3PO?" Padmé asked, glancing at the pale boy beside her. "No!" the blonde Skywalker shot back, startling her with the intensity of his response. "That thing is nothing like 3PO. He lowered his voice. "I have no idea why Revan would even create something like that, but it's not natural. It's unlike any droid I've ever seen." Padmé, trying to reassure him, asked, "It can't be that bad, can it?" Anakin shook his head, eyes wide with concern. "No, it's worse." Then, out of nowhere, Revan turned to the handmaiden, his gray eyes meeting hers with a strange intensity. "Would you like to meet him?" he asked, catching her off guard. She couldn't help but notice how unique his eyes were, something about them so captivating. But quickly, she shook off the thought. She had a duty to her people, a responsibility as the Queen of Naboo. The moment they left Tatooine, she would never see the Skywalkers again. And oddly, that thought weighed heavier on her heart than it shouldn't. Revan stood with his back turned, motioning to the droid he had created, the shadows of the desert world still clinging to his silhouette. "Meet HK-48, he introduced, his tone grim but proud. The droid's appearance was far from comforting ahead, shaped strangely, its hollow eyes, sockets gleaming red, and a central, rectangular battering ram fused into its frame, all covered in rust-colored plating. It was a beast in metal form, not something out of a child's innocent fantasy. I made him when I was young. Maybe not the kind of toy a kid should dream up, but," he chuckled darkly, "I was always a bit different." Padmé, her eyes locking onto Revan's creation, couldn't hide her smile. "Was?" she teased, and for a split second, the ice around Revan cracked, his lips curling into the smallest of smiles. "I made him to protect my family, my mother, my brother. They're all I have. And I'd do anything to keep them safe, even if it means killing anyone who dares harm them, Jedi, Senate, or anyone else." Padmé's heart shifted at his words, and she felt the weight of his resolve. "I wish I had someone like you," she whispered. Her cheeks flushed, but the truth of her words lingered between them, charged and sincere. Revan chuckled lightly as he watched Padmé's reaction to his comment. Her glare could have made anyone else crumble, but not him. Anakin, on the other hand, couldn't help but notice how Padmé acted around his brother, stirring something inside him. He quickly brushed it off, though. Revan smirked. "I am pretty incredible, aren't I?" The only response was a shove from the handmaiden. "So, you want to see him up and about?" he asked, getting an eager nod in return. Reaching behind the droid's head, Revan flipped a switch, making its eyes glow blood red as it powered up and climbed off the table. As it scanned the room, its gaze locked onto Revan, and Padmé instinctively grabbed his arm in fear. She much preferred dealing with the Federation droids than this one. "Greetings, Master. Inquiry. Would you like me to eliminate this meatbag?" HK-48 asked with unsettling eagerness. Padmé tightened her grip on Revan's arm. "That won't be necessary, HK," Revan replied with a chuckle, knowing how his mother had come to accept the droid despite its personality. Just then, R2-D2 made his presence known with a series of beeps, grabbing HK's attention as he looked down at the astromech droid. "Oh, do shut up, you little bleeping trash compactor," HK snapped at the R2 unit, who only responded with more bleeps. "See what I mean?" Anakin whispered to Padmé, still holding on to Revan's arm, noticing the silence from him. "I don't want to be anything like that useless bucket of bolts, meatbag," HK quipped, making Anakin frown at being called a meatbag. Why couldn't HK just call him Anakin? "Would you like me to be more like that droid disgrace?" HK taunted, to which Anakin responded fiercely. 3PO is not a disgrace. He was quick to defend his creation. And would it kill you to be nicer to everyone that's not Revan? He added. Of course, Master. HK replied sarcastically. Shall I fetch your dinner for you? It's no problem. I live to serve your every desire, Master. You know it doesn't really work if you tell me you're mocking me before you mock me, Anakin muttered at the assassination droid. Answer. Well, if I didn't tell you, I'd be worried that your fleshy processing drive wouldn't understand that I was mocking you, meatbag. After hours of insults from HK-48, the droid had spared no one but Revan, who he referred to as Master. Meanwhile, Shmi accepted the food capsules from Qui-Gon in exchange for shelter, grateful for the company as the storm raged outside, preventing their departure until nightfall. As they sat around the table discussing the harsh reality of slavery, Padmé struggled to comprehend its prevalence in the Outer Rim. There are tiny devices implanted inside the bodies of slaves when their masters first gain them, Shmi explained. Revan's close to finding ours, though, Anakin chimed in with hope. And once he does, we can finally be free from Watto and leave Tatooine. His optimism was met with a soft ruffle of his hair from Revan, a rare moment of warmth despite their harsh lives. Shmi's heart swelled as she saw her son's bond. Yet, the fear of tampering with the devices lingered in the air, reminding them all of the delicate path they walked between freedom and danger. Then, boom! You blow up faster than a farewell to your mom, Anakin finished, not noticing the shocked faces of Padmé and Jar Jar. The Jedi Master, however, kept a calm expression he knew all too well about slavery in the Outer Rim. But as a Jedi, he had to remain detached. The actions of the Jedi reflected on the Republic. How rude, muttered the Gungan with a frown. I can't believe slavery still exists, Padmé said, her face sour. The Republic's anti-slavery laws, she began, but was cut off by Revan, who sat across from her. Doesn't exist here, he interrupted. The Republic never cared for those beyond its borders. They talk about being the galaxy's protectors, just like the Jedi, but the truth is, they only defend what benefits them in the end. Revan, Shmi scolded. Seriously, I'm just stating the facts, Mum. Both the Jedi and the Republic have known about the slavery, the Hutt Syndicate, the pirates, and slavers controlling the Outer Rim for ages, and they've done nothing. Maybe it's because they know they'd be overwhelmed if they tried to fight all those pirates? Qui-Gon mused, leaning forward. And what about the Jedi? Revan shot back. What about them? With all the children they take from their families, surely they could build an army. The Jedi are peacekeepers, not soldiers. Qui-Gon responded, unshaken by Revan's jab, a familiar protest he'd heard countless times before. But weren't they soldiers in the Old Republic? Revan pressed. They protected the innocent, defeated the corrupt. That was a different time, Qui-Gon countered. Now, we live in an age of peace, where the Jedi no longer need to be warriors. You seem to know a lot for a simple farmer, Revan remarked, his eyes narrowing as he studied the long-haired man. Qui-Gon Jinn, with a knowing smile, replied, I could say the same about you, my young friend. The Jedi's lips curled into a small grin. Not many know about the Old Republic, nor do they care much either. Revan's thirst for knowledge was insatiable, something his mother, Shmi, couldn't help but comment on, much to her son's displeasure. Don't give me that look, honey. You know it's true, Revan grumbled, a small pout forming on his face. History tends to repeat itself, and only a fool ignores it. Padmé giggled softly at the sight. Anakin, eager to shift the mood, asked, So, have you ever seen pod racing? I have, Revan responded. They have pod racing on Malastare. As Qui-Gon Jinn arrived on Tatooine, his attention was drawn not only to Anakin Skywalker, but also to his older brother, Revan Skywalker. A self-trained, Force-sensitive teenager, Revan carried the weight of years spent under the control of the cruel junk dealer Watto. With Padmé undercover and intrigued by Revan's intense intelligence and unwavering moral clarity, the plot took an unexpected turn. As Revan's latent powers began to manifest, strange visions and unsettling whispers from the Force led Qui-Gon to suspect something far deeper than just raw talent. It seemed Revan was tied to a prophecy the Jedi Council knew nothing about. What began as a search for parts to repair a ship evolved into a battle for destiny, legacy, and rebellion as Revan's presence altered the course of the galaxy. Anakin glanced at the older man sitting at the table, his curiosity piqued. You're a Jedi Knight, aren't you? He asked. Revan, looking as though he'd seen it all, responded with a smirk. I doubt it, Annie. I expect you're a Jedi Master. Either that or you've been waiting for your trial for far too long. Qui-Gon, surprised by Revan's deep knowledge of the Jedi Order, couldn't help but notice the subtle jab at his age. What makes you think I'm a Jedi? He inquired, though his gaze lingered more on Anakin, who had asked the question. I saw your lightsaber earlier. Anakin said, matter-of-factly, Jedi are the only ones who use lightsabers. He nodded as if he'd cracked a cosmic code. Revan, ever the enigma, thought for a moment. His presence here was supposed to remain under wraps. Any attention would complicate things. Maybe I killed a Jedi and took it as a prize? He offered, his voice dripping with ambiguity, leaving the room hanging in tense silence. Revan's voice cut through the air with a sharp conviction. I don't think so, he said, locking eyes with the Jedi Master. The only way to kill a Jedi besides overwhelming them or the passage of time is a Sith Lord. But according to the Old Republic texts I've read, they were either destroyed or faded into history. Though you can't trust everything in a book, can you? His words hung in the air, leaving Qui-Gon astounded by how much the boy knew about both the Jedi, the Sith, and the ancient past. Anakin, eager to share his thoughts, spoke up, his voice full of hope. I had a dream once, that I was a Jedi Knight. I came back here and freed all the slaves. His eyes sparkled with the possibility. Qui-Gon raised an eyebrow. Is that why you're here? To free us? Anakin didn't buy the Jedi's answer, but Qui-Gon remained firm. No, I'm afraid not. Anakin, however, was undeterred. I think you have. Why else would you be here? Revan pretended not to care, though his sharp ears caught every word. Qui-Gon, sensing the boy's curiosity, sighed inwardly before yielding to the inevitable. All right, since you're so keen, we're headed to Coruscant, the heart of the Republic, on an urgent mission. Revan, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. Seems you're far off track then, he remarked. Trust me, I know, Qui-Gon replied with a heavy sigh. Our ship's been damaged, and we're stuck here until it's fixed. Padmé, with a somber expression, added, if we had the right parts and tools, I'm sure Revan could fix it. Revan's eyes flickered with interest. If you've got the parts, I can fix anything, he offered. Padmé smiled faintly, but the disappointment in her voice was clear. We don't have the parts. That's why we ended up at Watto's in the first place. Qui-Gon stood by, watching the scene unfold with a quiet intensity. Waisa got no moolah to trade, Jar Jar muttered, the weight of his words sinking in. These junk dealers must have some weakness? Padmé pondered aloud, her mind racing for a solution. Everybody shares the same weakness on this planet. Revan's voice cut through the murmur, his eyes meeting Padmé's with a knowing look. Gambling. It's the heart of this place. Watto's got slaves because of I've bet and won the money he needed, he added, his words carrying a weight Padmé could feel deep in her chest. Qui-Gon mulled over Revan's words, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Greed can be a powerful ally, he mused, his eyes narrowing. I've got a pod, Revan said simply. Well, I made it. The tension hung in the air, charged with possibilities, as they realized this desperate gamble might be their only chance. In a galaxy where destinies intertwine, Revan Skywalker, a self-trained Force-sensitive teen, stands at the crossroads of fate. Haunted by visions in his past under the cruel junk dealer Watto, Revan's presence on Tatooine disrupts the calm. His stoic nature and sharp intellect catch the attention of Padmé, undercover and drawn to his clarity. When a race looms on the horizon, Revan's suggestion to enter his pod into the competition brings tension. While his mother warns of Watto's wrath, Revan confidently dismisses the threat. Yet, the underlying truth is darker. Anakin, his younger brother, is forced to race under Watto's control, and Revan's protective instincts clash with the deep moral cost of the action. As Qui-Gon Jinn senses an ominous ripple in the Force, it becomes clear Revan may hold the key to a prophecy, one that challenges the very fabric of the Jedi's beliefs. His journey is one of rebellion, destiny, and a profound moral battle, as the boy who was meant to be lost may change the fate of the galaxy. Shmi looked at Revan with a deep sadness, her heart heavy with the terror of seeing her sons risk their lives for nothing more than the chance for Watto to make more money. It broke her to the core. But Mom, I love it, Anakin retorted, a spark of defiance in his young eyes. Pod racing was his dream, his escape from the chains of slavery, and he swore to become the greatest racer the galaxy had ever seen. Revan, always the more pragmatic one, tried to soothe her fears. Come on, Mother. You can't deny that the prize money could fix everything, pay for the parts, and even buy our freedom. He knew the stakes, but his mind raced with the possibilities. Qui-Gon stepped in, sensing the tension, his voice calm but firm. "Revan," he said, turning to Shmi, "is there anyone here who could help us? Someone who's friendly to the Republic?" Shmi looked down, the weight of her helplessness clear in her eyes. She shook her head. "Number." Revan stood tall, a quiet guardian of his home. "I need you to protect the house again, HK. If you detect any intruders, do what you must," he commanded. The droid's cold voice broke the silence. "So, I may dispose of any worthless intruders, as you say." A smirk passed over Revan's face as he nodded. "Exactly, but don't harm anyone inside the house." "HK," Ever the Cynic scoffed, "what about that useless bucket of bolts?" "He gives droids a bad name." Revan chuckled. "I'm not here to stop you." With a final glance, Revan stepped out, unaware of the Jedi who followed him from the shadows. Racing across the rooftops, he made his way into the harsh desert. After a half-hour trek, he entered the secret cave that had become his sanctuary. Powering up the generator, the dim lights flickered, revealing a challenging obstacle: courser ropes, poles, and swinging blade saw, the tools he needed to hone his skills in solitude. "HK, protect the house again. If any hostile entities approach, do what you have to do," Revan ordered with a half-smile. "So, I can eliminate the intruders?" HK quipped, earning a brief nod. "Yes, but don't harm my family. What about that useless bucket of bolts? He gives us droids a bad name." HK muttered. "I won't stop you if I'm not around," Revan chuckled, heading out unaware of the Jedi tailing him. Leaping across rooftops, Revan swiftly made his way toward the desert. After trekking for half an hour, he arrived at a hidden cave. Inside, he powered up a generator, lighting up a training area filled with obstacles like rope swings, poles, and swinging blade shifts, own secret training ground. The tension hung in the air as something ominous stirred in the distance. Qui-Gon Jinn, keeping a careful distance, watched Revan Skywalker as he moved around the cave, impressed by the boy's ingenuity in creating an obstacle course from scraps. Just as he was about to step forward and discover what had brought him here in the dead of night, Revan's voice broke the silence, echoing in the cave. "Are you there?" he asked, his gaze searching the room. "The dreams are getting worse, more vivid. I need to know I'm not losing my mind." Qui-Gon, puzzled, wondered what these dreams were, visions that seemed to plague Revan, of a man in a mask, hinting at a dark future. "Why do I keep seeing that man in the mask? Is that supposed to be my future? Is that why his name is Revan too?" Revan muttered. Qui-Gon stepped into the light, his voice cutting through the tension. "What dreams are you talking about, Revan?" The sudden appearance startled the boy, a moment of realization hanging in the air. Qui-Gon Jinn, having skillfully followed Revan Skywalker through the shadows, watches with growing intrigue as the boy, with raven black hair and storm gray eyes, moves around his self-made obstacle course. Revan's resourcefulness impresses him as he works through the scraps of Tatooine, creating something uniquely his own. But just as Qui-Gon is about to step forward and confront him, the young Skywalker mutters to himself in the dimly lit cave, his voice heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. "The dreams are getting worse, more vivid. I need to know I'm not going crazy." The tension in the air grows thick as Revan speaks of dreams that haunt him, visions of a man in a mask, a shadowy figure that might be linked to his very future. With curiosity piqued, Qui-Gon steps out of the darkness, his voice calm yet firm. "What dreams are you talking about, Revan?" Revan, startled by the sudden presence, spins around, the mystery of his torment deepening as they stand face to face in the eerie light of the cave. The voice comes and goes, but there's something about this place that allows me to hear them the clearest. "This place has a strong connection to the Force." Qui-Gon remarked, his tone calm yet insightful. "Perhaps if you shared more about these dreams, I could help you uncover the answers you're searching for." The boy hesitated, uncertainty clouding his gaze. "I wouldn't even know where to begin." Qui-Gon smiled warmly, a fatherly gesture. "How about we start from the beginning?" he suggested, his voice filled with gentle encouragement. "It would take years to explain everything." "Then we'd better get started, my young friend." And so, the tale unfolds, the return of the Prodigal Knight and the Phantom Menace. While most of the plot mirrors the original, some subtle changes shape this story. The protagonist, Revan, has no memory of his past incarnation, his knowledge of the Force limited to dreams and visions. Unlike the Jedi, who remain unaware of his true identity, Qui-Gon begins to suspect there is more to Revan than meets the eye. The Council, without proof of Revan's reincarnation, sees him as just another boy with immense potential but too old to be trained. Revan, still at the level of a regular Padawan, faces struggles that shape him differently than the mythic heroes of old. This is a tale of a boy, haunted by memories he doesn't fully understand, and a destiny slowly unfolding before him. In a galaxy where destiny intertwines with the Force, Qui-Gon Jinn stumbles upon not just Anakin Skywalker on Tatooine, but also his enigmatic older brother, Revan Skywalker. A teenager burdened by years of oppression, Revan is a self-taught Force sensitive who harbors a mysterious path. As tensions mount, his latent powers begin to emerge, causing strange visions and whispers from the Force. Qui-Gon soon suspects Revan may be linked to a prophecy even the Jedi Council is unaware of. What begins as a mere quest for ship parts spirals into a tale of fate, rebellion, and the hidden legacies of two brothers each carrying their own burden, one of hope and the other of darkness. With a sharp political lens, the story explores the clash of ideals between Jedi and the harsh realities of life on Tatooine. Revan, a brilliant yet cynical soul, finds himself torn between his survival instincts and the mysterious pull of a greater purpose, altering the course of destiny itself. Revan sat beneath the flickering cave light, his voice low and uncertain as he admitted he didn't know where to begin, caught off guard by the Jedi who had found his hidden refugee's only private place in a life stripped of freedom. Qui-Gon stood calm, his gentle presence urging the boy to start from the beginning. Sensing the storm within him was deeper than the one outside, Revan hesitated, burdened by visions he barely understood, his eyes haunted by memories that didn't belong to his life but still felt real, tangled between destiny and something far older than prophecy. "Then we better get started, my friend," the weathered mentor urged with a calm smirk, drawing a reluctant groan from the brooding youth whose storm gray eyes flickered with unease. The elder settled onto the sun-baked stone, legs folded, aura serene, a quiet invitation echoing in the desert wind. "So, in your own time, tell me about these dreams of yours." Hesitant fingers grazed the back of his neck as the young outcast in sleeveless robes pulled silence close, wrestling with memories not born of this life visions too sharp, too real to be mere nightmares. "Ever since I can remember," he began, voice low and rough, "I haven't dreamed like normal people do. Most dreams are chaos, fragments, nonsense. Mine aren't. They feel like recollections. Like something buried is clawing its way to the surface." It was less a question and more a grim realization. "No," Revan muttered, shaking his head as he leaned back, eyes fixed on the cave-shadowed ceiling, the weight of unseen memories pressing down. "Is it possible to dream about the future?" he asked, shifting his storm-gray gaze to the Jedi Master. Qui-Gon, calm amidst the stillness, replied with quiet certainty, "It's not a common gift among Jedi. But yes, the Force can offer glimpses of what was, and what may be." A dry chuckle escaped Revan. "Huh. Well, at least this planet hasn't driven me crazy. Yet." Revan muttered, a flicker of relief crossing his storm-gray eyes as he confessed to the cloaked Jedi Master about fractured glimpses of a future that felt both inevitable and impossible visions, haunted by choices he hadn't made and lives he hadn't lived inly, to be cut off by a calm, grounding truth. The future is never fixed, always shifting like sand in the wind. 1,000 paths branching from every moment, each vision merely a whisper of what could be, not what must be. Leaving the boy cloaked in doubt, staring into the void of endless possibility, a brooding teen with storm-gray eyes and raven hair glares, rejecting the ideals of a system he sees as corrupt, claiming the Republic and Jedi care only for power, wealth, and control, no different than the dark forces they oppose. When challenged that the Jedi use their power for good, he fires back with sharp cynicism, questioning whether good and evil are just perspectives, daring to see the Force not in absolutes, but in shades of gray, leaving silence in the wake of a truth too uncomfortable to answer. A brooding teen with storm-gray eyes and raven hair glares, voice laced with cynicism as he challenges the ideals of the Jedi and the Republic, claiming they care only for power, authority, and wealth, no different than the Sith or the Hutts. When told the Jedi use their power for good, he fires back with a sharp retort. What is good but a point of view? questioning why the Force must be seen in absolutes of black and white instead of shades of gray, pushing the boundaries of belief with raw intellect and haunted intensity. A brooding teen with storm gray eyes and raven hair leans against the shadows of his cave, voice sharp with cynical wisdom beyond his years. They've never cared about anything beyond their borders, only power, control, wealth, cloaked in the Republic's hollow glory and the Jedi's quiet pacifism. But look closer, and the line between them and the Hutts, the Sith, begins to blur. When compassion meets dogma, he challenges it. If the Jedi wield power for good, then what even is good? Just perspective, isn't it? Maybe I'm the hero and you're the villain, or maybe it's the other way around. Why must the Force be light or dark? Why not endless shades of gray? A stoic mentor watches, calm but troubled, replying that the Force doesn't bend to simplicity, but the boy won't back down. Why not? The question lingers, echoing through the silence like a spark before the storm. A lone seeker with storm gray eyes ponders the ancient divide. Why? Can either side harness both lights? Wisdom speaks. Light and dark are opposites, not allies. One serves with compassion, the other rules through rage. But isn't power the true goal for both? Stripped bare, their hunger looks the same. Yet the path defines the purpose. The Jedi walk surrender, the Sith seize control. In the end, it's not the Force they wield, but the choice that shapes them. I wouldn't call it a fascination, he said with a shrug, voice low and edged with ancient knowing. Just look at history's same patterns, same mistakes, war after war. Each one blindsiding the Jedi because they keep believing the Sith are gone. Exar Kun, Darth Revan, Malgus, the Great Sith War, the Mandalorian conflict, the Jedi Civil War, the Dark Wars, the Cold War, the Galactic War, the New Sith Wars. They all began in silence, then shattered the peace like glass. Darth Revan, the Master murmured, recognition flashing like a half-remembered dream, a name etched in legend, a shadow from 4,000 years past the road to some, monster to others, a blade that carved its mark across time. He wasn't sure if it was really her, or just his mind conjuring the voice of someone who could still pierce through his calm like Yoda, like Dooku, the man who once shaped him into a knight, a ghost from a past he never escaped. You okay, Qui-Gon? Revan's voice cut through the silence, storm gray eyes locked onto him, sharp with concern. Snapped from memory, the Jedi Master offered a quiet assurance. I'm fine, just echoes. He brushed it off, but the boy didn't buy it, still said nothing. No one knew the weight he carried, not even this brooding youth in desert robes, haunted by dreams that weren't his. Everyone had shadows, even Jedi. You seem drawn to the old Republic, Qui-Gon said, shifting focus, chasing thoughts away from lost loves and fallen comrades, anchoring instead to the present a young mind full of questions and a future neither could yet see. I wouldn't call it a fascination, he said with a quiet shrug, storm gray eyes distant. Just look at history's same patterns, over and over. Wars rise, empires fall, and the Jedi always think they've won, until they don't. Exar Kun, Darth Revan, Malgus the Sith vanish, then return from the shadows, striking when no one sees it coming. The name hung in the air like an echo across millennia, Darth Revan. The old master's breath, Kotha knew that name now. Buried deep in ancient texts and forgotten wars, a legend carved in fire and ruin, a soul who once stood as both savior and destroyer, light and darkness bound in one. Savior Conqueror, Jedi Knight, Sith Lord, the Prodigal Knight titles carved in legend by a lone soul, who walked both edges of the Force and lived to tell the tale a rare being, who mastered light and dark, not as opposites but as one breath. Two halves of a shattered destiny, yet why would a mother name her son after a fallen Dark Lord whose shadow still haunts the Republic? Why invite the weight of that bloodline when even his descendants bore the burden with silent pride? Qui-Gon mused on the paradox of balance. A gray Jedi may touch the dark but never drown in it, for the light always pulls back. Restraint becomes weakness, and weakness becomes fall. Revan spoke with quiet intensity, asking if Qui-Gon had ever heard of Kriya or Tsar names that carried weight in his haunted mind, only to be met with an honest denial. Yet the Jedi's promise to seek answers lightened the boy's burden just enough. Their bond deepened in that moment, a skeptic and a guardian dancing around trust. One snarky remark at a time. Revan spoke with quiet intensity, asking if Qui-Gon had ever heard of Kriya or Jar, names that carried weight in his haunted mind. Qui-Gon admitted he hadn't, Feeling the weight of the boy's disappointment, but vowing to uncover the truth once back on Coruscant, earning a reluctant nod and a faint jab about Jedi pacifism, met with a calm, amused smile as the old warrior turned the question back on the young one, curiosity now burning in his eyes. Revan spoke with quiet intensity, recalling his search on Coruscant for a Master Jarhad Qui-Gon ever heard of Kriya or Jar. The Jedi admitted he hadn't, heart sinking at the boy's shadowed expression, but vowed to uncover the truth upon their return, offering his word without hesitation. Revan muttered a reluctant thanks, conceding the Jedi wasn't so bad for a pacifist earning, a wry smile, and a light reply that he aimed to please, though curiosity still burned in his eyes for answers yet unspoken. And that is? Padmé, let something slip today, something I meant to keep quiet until I could ask you myself. You mean about me using the Force in the shop? Yeah, figured that out, Revan said, realizing Padmé wasn't as discreet as he'd hopeless and learned about talking around her. Correct, the Jedi replied, calm and steady. I saw Kreia training a younger version of you basic techniques, force pull, force push. Took only weeks to grasp them, almost like muscle memory returning, as if you'd once known the Force deeply and were just reawakening it, like riding a forgotten bike through shadows of a past life. In this quiet yet intense chapter of the Return of the Prodigal Knight and the Phantom Menace, the desert winds carry whispers of destiny, as a brooding young outcast with storm gray eyes confronts visions of a past he never lived, while a weary Jedi with a rebel heart sits in silent meditation, sensing something deeper in the Force clues hidden within fractured memories and ancient echoes. Their bond begins to form in the stillness, two souls on the edge of revelation, drawn together by unseen threads as a disguised observer watches closely, her pendant glinting beneath simple cloth, all heading toward a capital world where truths will shatter illusions and fate ignites anew. Here's the next chapter of the Return of the Prodigal Knight and the Phantom Menace, where silence speaks louder than lightsaber stew souls adrift in the Force. One burdened by forgotten memories, the other guided by quiet wisdom, as a storm-haired youth with haunted eyes walks the edge of identity while a grizzled guardian seeks meaning in visions he doesn't yet understand, their bond forming not in battle but in stillness beneath desert skies and whispered truths, setting the stage for revelations that will shake the halls of power long before they reach the shining spires of destiny. What did you feel when the cave echoed with secrets only the Force could tell? As Tatooine's twin suns bleed into the horizon, fate cracks open beneath the weight of a Gambalone boy races for freedom. Another stirs with power he cannot name. Qui-Gon Jinn stands in silence, watching the dunes swallow the light, knowing the hyperdrive rests on a bet that could save a galaxy or bury it. Anakin bends metal and fire to his will, but it is Revan who unsettles the Force itself, visions clawing at his mind, whispers calling him from the dark, a name too ancient to remember. Revan. Shmi speaks in hushed tones of sons born not of flesh but design, of eyes that glowed before they opened. Padmé, cloaked in duty, finds her resolve trembling under starlight as a quiet moment with Revan unravels something deeper than loyalty, something like truth. The podracer roars to life at dusk, thunder in oil-streaked hands, while shadows stretch long with the return of a legacy half forgotten. This is not just a race. It is the first breath of destiny, tangled in blood, sand, and a name that once broke empires. As the twin suns bled into the horizon, Qui-Gon stood at the edge of the homestead, comlink silent in his hand after Obi. Wan's wary voice faded into static trapped by sand and fate. He tucked the device away, words unspoken weighing heavier than duty. There was no choice, only the pull of something ancient stirring beneath the dunes. His gaze fell to the courtyard where two boys shaped metal in destiny under a dying light, their hands building more than eraser forging, the first sparks of a future no Jedi prophecy had foreseen. Nearby, a handmaiden watched with guarded eyes, and a mother stood beside the Jedi Master, both bound by love and silence. In that stillness, Qui-Gon felt it the echo of forgotten names, the breath before revelation, the quiet unraveling of what it meant to be chosen not by the Council, but by the Force itself. You should be very proud of your sons, Qui-Gon said, his voice cutting through the still desert air. They give without any thought of reward. Our galaxy would be a far better place if everyone acted as they do. A quiet warmth flickered across her face. a mother's pride glowing like embers beneath the weight of years spent in chain. She had nothing to give them but love and lessons forged in hardship, yet somehow they grew kind, unspoiled by hunger or hopelessness. They know nothing of greed, only of dreams, she whispered, then hesitated, the truth clawing at her tongue, something deeper, older, written in the way their eyes caught the twin suns just before dusk, in the way one boy once stopped a man's breath with a glance, in the visions that came like storms none could explain. Special power. Under the twin suns of a desert world, fate crackles in the silence between heartbeats. Qui-Gon speaks truths buried deep in the Force, his voice steady yet laced with awe as he reveals the boy's gift, seeing what has not yet come, a sign of souls touched by something ancient and unyielding. Her breath catches, eyes locked on his, shimmering with a hope long denied. These children brothers bound by blood and something darker were never meant for chains or dust. One, forged in visions of fire and shadow, wakes screaming from dreams he cannot name. The other, bright and raw, burns with a speed that defies nature. And in the hush of evening, as one whispers words that make a girl blush and a boy flush with fury, a mother's guilt settles like sand after a storm she knows they were never hers to give away, never born, but brought. I remember his first vision, the sweat, the terror, the raw power trembling through him, and those storm gray eyes wide with something beyond fear. Qui-Gon listened, breath held, as she spoke of the house shaking, of a scream that tore through the night like fate unspooling. It was only her arms around him that stilled the storm, only love that pulled him back. And then, broken and small, he begged not for himself, but to be spared from him again. Vitiate. The name slipped into the silence like a shadow with no source. Qui-Gon turned it over in his mind, a whisper from no past he knew. Yet it rang with weight, with warning. If this Vitiate was not of history, then perhaps he was a prophesiant. If so, why would a name unborn already hunger for a child's suffering? As the twin suns bled into the horizon, a quiet dread settled in Qui-Gon's bones. Something ancient stirred in this desert dust, in the boy called Revan. The name alone was a scar on history, whispered in Jedi halls like a curse from a forgotten war. 4,000 years ago, a legend turned tyrant, a Jedi who walked the edge and became something darker. Darth Revan, the fallen general who burned through galaxies with his apprentice at his side. And now here, in the silence of a slave's hut on Tatooine, that same name had been given not by chance, but by blood. Shmi's answer hung in the air, simple yet unsettling. It's just a name, but Qui-Gon knew better. Names are never just names. They are echoes, prophecies, warnings. And this one carried the weight of a destiny neither she nor the galaxy may be ready to face. "Oh my," Shmi whispered, her hand trembling over her lips as the weight of revelation settled in. "I had no idea what happened to him." Qui-Gon exhaled slowly, his voice low and measured beneath the twin sun's fading glow. "I'm afraid my knowledge of Darth Revan is limited. After he returned to the light, he vanished into the unknown regions, never seen again. He withheld the darker truth, the Jedi Council's desperate gambit, the reprogramming, the manipulation of a fallen hero's mind to serve their cause, a wound on the soul of the Order itself." Shmi closed her eyes, absorbing the silence between words. "I never knew the name carried such shadows. I only named him that because it came to me in a dream mode I've never understood, yet could never forget. Under the dim glow of Tatooine's twin suns descending beyond the dunes, a truth stirs beneath the silence. Shmi's voice trembles as she speaks of sons born without fathers, of miracles wrapped in sand and shadow. When Qui-Gon hears the words fall from her lips, he feels the Force ripple like wine through ancient ruin-stone boys, untouched by mortal lineage, their origins veiled in something far older than bloodlines. Her confession hangs heavy, not with shame but sorrow, a mother's plea woven into the fabric of fate itself. And though the Jedi bears no answers, only doubt and duty at war within him, one thing becomes clear. These children were not born by chance, but placed here by hands, unseen their destinies, already written in starlight and storm. I've never heard of a Jedi named Skywalker, but as the desert wind whispered through the stone walls, Shmi lowered her gaze, a quiet flush crossing her face. There was no father. With either of them, she admitted, voice trembling like sand on a dune. With Revan, I thought perhaps one drink too many under the twin suns, but when it happened again with Anakin, I knew it wasn't chance. 2 sons born without a man, and I'm no liar, no sinner. I can't explain it, and I have no proof. Can you help them?" Qui-Gon stood in silence, the weight of her words pressing like a storm on the horizon. "As cruel as it sounds, I didn't come here to free slaves." His voice cracked not with indifference, but with the ache of a truth he wasn't ready to face. Under the twin suns of a desert world where fate cracks through the sand like lightning, two boys stand on the edge of destinies, a prodigy with the heart of a hero, the other a storm wrapped in silence, born not of blood but of something older, deeper. As the podracer roars back to life and echoes of ancient wars whisper through the dunes, a mother's truth cuts through years of illusion. They were never born, they were placed. Revan, marked by visions and a power he cannot name, carries the weight of galaxies no child should bear, while Anakin burns with a light too bright to ignore. The Jedi sense the imbalance, the divergence, the thread of something long buried now rising. One is too old for training, too wild for rules, too close to the edge, yet neither can be denied. In quiet moments beneath star-strewn skies, bonds form not through words, but through silence, touch, a shared breath between souls recognizing each other across lifetimes. This is not just a story of pod races and prophecy, Sith. It is the awakening of a legacy veiled in shadow, where protection comes at a cost, where names from a forgotten age rise like dust in the wind, and where love, loyalty, and the Force itself begin to blur into one unbreakable vow. Under the dim glow of Tatooine's twin suns, Shmi speaks in hushed tones of a power she cannot explain her. Sun's eyes flash with storm and fire, his rage summoning an invisible grip that crushes the breath from those who threaten them, leaving slavers gasping on the sand without a single touch. She watches the Jedi Master closely, seeing the flicker of recognition in his gaze, the weight of forbidden knowledge. He confirms what she fears it is not a path of light, but one walked by shadows, an ancient discipline twisted by the Sith, born of fury and control. The word hangs in the air like a sentence. Sith. A name whispered in dread, now tied to the boy she holds dear. A force both terrifying and protective, stirring echoes of forgotten wars and destinies not yet written. Revan mentioned them last night. Aren't they enemies of the Jedi? The Jedi nodded, but they were destroyed a millennium ago by both the Jedi and the Republic. But I wouldn't worry about Revan using that ability. I'll speak to him about it later. In truth, the Jedi Maverick was uneasy if Revan was tapping into dark side powers. It wasn't just a warning sign, it was a spark on dry tinder. Such abilities could mark the beginning of a fall few returned from, and if the Council learned of this, they might not seek to train him, they'd seek to stop him by any means necessary. Before he could press further, a thunderous bang split the air, followed by the raw scream of a podracer's engine roaring to life. Anakin sat inside, grinning like a boy who'd just stolen the stars, while Revan stood at the flank, smeared in oil, hands blackened, overall stained with sweat and grit. Qui-Gon looked impressed few could have rebuilt that machine in time. Shmi didn't flinch. She knew her son. He'd always had a gift for fixing what others abandoned. A quiet genius forged in silence and sand. One he'd shared only with his brother through long days beneath scorched metal skies. She stood in the shadow of a crime lord's domain, every instinct screaming that unseen eyes were watching. Jabba's reach was long, his cruelty legendary, and the thought of being tracked sent a chill down her spine. Shaking off the dread, she wandered the quiet corners of the Skywalker home, searching for distraction. Shmi scrubbed dishes in the kitchen. Jar Jar snored in a heap on the floor. The droids lay dormant in the boys' room. And HK's mechanical footsteps echoed like a hunter's breath through the halls best avoided. Outside, Anakin and Qui-Gon sat in silent vigil on the veranda, silhouetted by the dying light. One figure remained unaccounted for Revan. Since Qui-Gon had taken him away hours ago, he'd vanished without a trace. Thena Creek. A door parted. He emerged, cloaked in dust and darkness, hood drawn, eyes glinting like storm clouds under starlight, as if he'd walked back from a vision no one else could see. She stood in the shadow of a world ruled by greed and power, where every whisper could be a threat and every ally a target. Jabba's domain loomed like a curse over the desert sands. Her mind raced with dangers unseen, spies in the dark, enemies at the gate, but she pushed the fear aside and stepped deeper into the quiet heart of the Skywalker home. Shmi moved gently through the remnants of dinner. Jar Jar sprawled in slumber, droids powered down, HK-47 prowling the halls like a specter she dared not meet. Outside, Qui-Gon and Anakin sat in silent vigil beneath the twin suns' dying light. but one presence remained untraceable, Revan. Since Qui-Gon took him away hours ago, he had vanished without a trace. Under the twin moons of a desert world, gray eyes meet brown in a silent spark that defies fate. Revan Skywalker steps forward, cloaked in shadow and starlight, his raven hair tousled by the wind as he sheds his cloak to reveal more than just sweat-soaked skin, but a presence raw and real. Padmé stands guarded, yet breathless, her heart betraying her composure as his soft voice cuts through the night with quiet concern, only for her pride to answer with sharp wit. Their words laced with tension, not of conflict, but connection. Two souls orbiting each other in the stillness before destiny's storm. Under the twin shadows of Tatooine's dunes, and a sky stitched with stars, a spark flickers between two souls bound by silence, and Storm Revan's sharp words cut like desert wind, teasing Padmé with a smirk that hides his ache, her flush betraying more than anger as she shoves him, only to find him yielding not with mockery but concern, his hands raised in false surrender before the question slips out. Raw and real, what's wrong? And in that moment, beneath the weight of unspoken destinies and the glow of distant suns, even defiance falters. Under the twin shadows of Tatooine's dusk, a whisper cuts through silence. You wound me, Padmé. Revan's voice carries a smirk, but his storm-gray eyes see deeper than lies. But you're a terrible liar! Denial flickers across her face, tight and rehearsed, yet he sees the tremor beneath the fear she hides, the weight she won't name. I can sense the emotions rolling off you, he says, calm, unrelenting. You may look fine on the outside, but inside, a storm. Her breath catches. He knows without knowing, feels what words refuse to say. Not psychic, just attuned to pain, shaped by it. And in that moment, under a sky bleeding into night, two souls stand at the edge of truth. One guarding secrets like scars, the other seeing them for what they are, not flaws, but proof of survival. Padmé swallowed hard, the weight of her secret pressing against her ribs, as Revan's voice cut through the silence like a whisper in the dark. She wanted to speak, to unburden herself, but the words died before they could form. Trapped beneath duty and deception, Tatooine felt less like a refuge and more like a cage, a desert grave for hope, and yet here he stood, his storm-gray eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch, his hands steady on her shoulders, grounding her in a moment she hadn't known she needed. I know we haven't known each other long, he said, voice low but sure, and you have no reason to trust me, but if you ever need to talk, I'm here. She didn't answer with words, just a quiet nod that carried the weight of everything left unsaid. Her mind drifting back to the people she'd sworn to protect, the ones suffering under shadows she couldn't yet fight, when suddenly he spoke again. Soft but certain, you're thinking about your people. Under the twin moons of a desert world, silence speaks louder than words when a guarded handmaiden's thoughts are suddenly heard by a boy with storm-gray eyes. Neither destiny nor denial can hide the truth any longer. He didn't just hear her mind, he felt her pain. And in that moment, between starlight and shadow, a bond forms not through choice but fate, as the weight of secrets, duty, and a name whispered from ancient times begins to stir something long buried beneath the sand. Under the twin moons of a desert world, fate whispers through the silence between two young souls where a simple apology becomes something greater, a fragile embrace revealing unspoken burdens and quiet strength. As stars bear witness, the weight of destiny presses upon them, not with thunder, but with stillness, the kind that shapes legends in shadows. A mother watches, heart full, as her son offers what he never learned from the sands, tenderness. And in that fleeting moment, beneath layers of duty and fear, a handmaiden lets go of control, of pretense, of the belief that courage means standing alone. Under the twin moons of a desert world where fate whispers through the sands, a bond forms between two souls bound by silence and destiny. Revan, a boy touched by visions and shadows, holds Padmé close beneath the sky, ablaze with stars, their breaths sinking with the hush of the night. As he pulls back to meet her gaze, his voice carries not just promise but power words, spoken not only aloud but within her mind, soft yet unshakable. He speaks of his brother, a racer unseen but already legendary, of hope riding on speed and faith. Trust me, he says, and the force behind those words wraps around her doubt like a lifeline. She hesitates, then surrenders not to romance, but to belief. Okay, she whispers, eyes glistening, heart guarded yet leaning forward. "I'll trust you. Don't let me down." And in that moment, under ancient skies, something shifts. An invisible thread tightens, destiny stirs, and the desert keeps its secrets just a little longer. Under the twin suns of a desert world, fate hums in the silence between heartbeats, where a mother's confession unravels the origin of two sons not born, but placed. As visions claw through time and a name long buried, Revan echoes from the dark, powers stir that defy Jedi doctrine. In stolen moments beneath star-choked skies, a handmaiden's doubt melts into quiet trust, and a touch speaks louder than vows. The podracer nears completion. Destiny edges closer, and one glance, one kiss on the cheek lingers like a promise, written in stardust, unspoken, undeniable. This is not just a tale of prophecy and podraces, but of bonds forged in shadow, choices carved by will, and the fragile line between light and something far more human. As the scorching twin suns of Tatooine sink beneath the Boonta Eve horizon, fate coils tightly around the Skywalkers. Revan, no longer a mere outcast, pulses with dangerous force powers, his storm gray eyes hinting at forgotten legacies and a Sith mask that haunts his dreams. Mace senses the threat, but also the potential. Revan, like himself, does not deny the dark, he bends it. Meanwhile, the veiled queen wrestles with her feelings as Revan's connection to her deepens through their rare, silent bond. Even without his urging, she knows the younger Skywalker would have raced in the Boonta Eve Classic, yet it's the older brother who sacrificed everything, even a beloved droid, to free him. As Qui-Gon stakes their future on a boy and a broken machine, the revelation that neither brother was born but placed shatters Jedi certainties. Tatooine, once a dusty sidestep, becomes the turning point where duty, desire, and destiny collide under desert stars. As dawn breaks over the scorched sands of Tatooine, Padmé steps out from the humble dwelling, curious about the boy whose eyes seem to pierce time itself. Revan, silent and distant, has vanished from breakfast like a shadow at noon. Drawn by intuition, she rounds the hovel to find him oil-smeared and wrist-deep in the battered engine of a podracer, his hands dancing with purpose beneath twin suns that seem to watch with ancient awareness. The engine hums like a creature remembering life, and as she wonders silently about his sleepless dedication, his voice emerges not from lips, but directly into her mind. "Just making sure the old girl's ready," he says, the words echoing without sound. He withdraws a jagged piece of debris, and the air thickens, not with dust, but with unspoken weight, sabotage, mistrust, destiny, all swirling like the coils of a prophecy too big for one soul to bear. Padmé blinks, stunned not by the miracle of his gift, but by the quiet sacrifice behind it. Here is no ordinary mechanic. Here is a thread in a larger weave. A boy wrestling angels beneath the engine's roar. Even the silent stones would cry out, echoes a truth from another gospel, and in that moment, she sees that Revan's toil isn't just about a race. It's a rebellion against something vast, unseen, and bound by the chains of forgotten design. He grumbled in her mind while tightening bolts beneath the starlit racer. His thoughts sharp and bitter, claiming the so-called champion lacked any real skill, only winning through sabotage and brute force on the track. She responded with a teasing remark about his complaining, which drew a smirk from him as he stood, wiping oily hands on desert-stained robes. Approaching her with a quiet gentleness, he paused, eyes softer now, and noted she looked better than last night, asking if she'd slept well, yet refusing to rise to her jab, the tension between them lingering like static in the sand-swept air. As the memory of their whispered conversation lingered like a desert mirage, she found her cheeks burning not from the suns, but from the ghost of a goodbye kiss left too carelessly on his skin. When she muttered a soft apology, he dismissed it with the kind of grin that masks old scars, saying, "It's not every day a pretty girl does that," only to earn a playful punch from her flushed hand, yet beneath the teasing, something deeper shimmered in the silence, as if both were actors in a scene foretold long ago. Like two stars fated to collide, knowing full well the wreckage it might leave behind. And in that glance, half dare, half farewell, he smiled again. Not at the kiss, but at the pause that followed, as though sensing that even lies wrapped in silk can reveal truth if the heart listens close enough. For as it said, there's a time to speak and a time to be silent, and in that hush, destiny held its breath. He looked at her, eyes flickering with a rare softness, and said he didn't need an apology. His concerns were limited to his family, a brother and mother who haunted his thoughts even in their absence. But the burden she bore, the weight of an entire planet relying on her decisions, was beyond his comprehension. He couldn't even begin to grasp the magnitude of such responsibility. She responded in a hushed voice, almost as if the shadows themselves might be listening, confessing that it wasn't easy, and revealing her hope that the Queen could sway the Senate into sending help. Then came the question, sincere and loaded with quiet awe. How does someone like her, seemingly ordinary, get chosen for such a mission, elevated to serve beside royalty? There was no sarcasm in his tone, just a genuine curiosity about the mysterious path that leads one from anonymity to purpose. It echoed the sentiment that many are called but few are chosen, a reminder that fate often selects its champions from the most unexpected corners, and in times of great need, even the quietest voices can carry the weight of nations. The glare she shoots could slice durasteel, her voice a blade, and what exactly is that supposed to mean? Revan, unfazed, counters with a calm that belies the storm brewing beneath. What do you think it means? There's an edge now, curiosity laced with challenge. He questions her purpose, barely a teenager, shadowing a queen. What could she offer that experience or metal couldn't? But her response isn't anger. It's a fire forged in duty. She speaks of lineage, of the refugee relief movement like a sacred rite, and as her mind brushes his, the guilt she tries to bury surfaces like smoke from a hidden flame. At 8, she took her oath in the apprentice legislature. By 11, she bore the full weight of political armor. Revan listens not just to her words, but to the sorrow beneath them. An echo of choices made too soon. It's a moment where title fades and truth stands naked. The galaxy doesn't wait for permission to shape its heroes. As one ancient line whispers, out of the mouths of babes comes strength, a reminder that greatness often walks in the guise of youth. At just 13, she was chosen to serve the Queen, not by bloodline, but by merit. And though her tongue almost slipped, revealing more than she should, his sharp gray eyes caught at a flicker of the truth beneath her disguise. She snapped, defending her skill, not with arrogance, but with conviction born from survival. He smirked, amused, as if sensing pride in her defiance. But she didn't waver. It's not power, she said, voice steeled, it's purpose. Their clash was quiet but cutting, like two stars in orbit ready to collapse. In the shadow of a fallen king whose greed had once sold out their people, she stood not as a girl but as a symbol of change. He listened, half cynic, half seer, measuring her words like scripture. The courtyard was silent, yet history trembled, as if the force itself leaned in. For as it is written, by their fruit you will recognize them. And hers were truths shaped by fire, not ambition. Revan leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowing with quiet challenge. And how many before her claimed noble intentions, he asked, his voice calm but cutting. Money and power twist everyone, not just those who fall to darkness. The Queen kept her poise, replying gently, she's not like that. But Revan didn't flinch. And how would you know? The bluntness struck like a blade. I beg your pardon? She replied, taken aback. He continued unshaken. You speak as if you know her completely, but as I said, power corrupts. From slaves to queens, no one is spared. In the shadowed stillness of Tatooine's night, a conversation cuts deeper than any blade. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, echoes one pilot's lament, a phrase that lingers like dust in desert wind. Or maybe you're a pessimist, one voice offers, only for Revan to reply with prophetic calm. A pessimist is what an optimist calls a realist. And suddenly, the sand feels heavier. Padmé, her stance defiant yet trembling, dares to hope aloud. Does no one act purely out of compassion? Is every kindness secretly bartered? Revan's eyes seem to see beyond her words, through time itself, as he answers not with anger, but with burdened truth. Bondage still exists, doesn't it? Corruption still exists, and they always will. It's a truth many refuse to face, yet one the Force has long whispered. Like the scriptures say, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Padmé's refusal, her belief in goodness, clashes against Revan's desolate foresight. But this isn't merely a battle of ideals. It's the collision of prophecy and politics, of two children trying to remake a galaxy with nothing but belief and scars. As Padmé clings to the Republic's promises like a raft in a sandstorm, Revan's stare cuts deeper than desert wind. His voice, low and unreadable, turns her faith into folly. Slavery is outlawed, she claims, her eyes burning with conviction. But Revan doesn't flinch. He sees through the veneer. The boy beside him, chained not just in body but in future, is proof enough. He speaks with quiet fire. Names may change, but chains remain. Call them servants, aides, anything polite, yet the yoke is the same. Her rebuttal, that payment marks the line between freedom and bondage, crumbles as he raises an eyebrow, asking if wages make a mother's sorrow any lighter. The moment lingers like prophecy, unsettling and absolute, echoing ancient truths. They have eyes but do not see. They have ears but do not hear. In this cracked corner of the galaxy, idealism becomes sand, slipping through fingers while the Force watches, silent and vast, beneath the veil of ordinary talk. A fracture in belief begins to show. He speaks with strange calm, defending the strange merchant who, despite harshness, gave them shelter, crumbs, and sometimes even coins, as if these gestures could wash away chains. But she, the girl cloaked in common cloth yet crowned in principle, quietly breaks the illusion. A servant chooses, a servant walks free, a servant does not carry an invisible death at the spine, and that difference, she says, is everything. He shrugs, dulled by the sand and silence of too many resigned days, unaware he's echoing the quiet despair of all who mistake tolerance for mercy. The truth, as she sees it, will set you free, though not without first scorching your comfort. It is a moment where philosophy meets dirt-stained reality. One soul, battered into numbness, clinging to what little good he's known. The other, still burning with a vision of justice not yet choked by compromise. Just as Padmé opened her mouth to speak, the soft echo of approaching footsteps cut the moment short. Turning slightly, she glimpsed her Jedi Guardian emerge from the shadows, still draped in the weathered poncho he'd taken mistakenly from what he thought was a decoy's trunk. Yet her faith in Sabe's choices remained unshaken. For what is royalty if not the art of delegation cloaked in trust? The Jedi Master greeted them with that calm smile that always seemed to mask something heavier, as if he knew the galaxy balanced on fragile conversations like this one. "Revan, would you come with me to Watto's?" he asked, like a priest inviting a penitent to confession before Judgment Day. Revan answered simply, "Sure," unaware that this short reply would tilt the course of fate. And in that silence, heavy with unspoken visions and withheld truths, it became clear that none of them were simply following orders. They were walking a script older than memory, as if, to quote the ancients, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord." Though no one could yet say who was writing this story. He casually mentioned he was nearly done with the podracer and guessed the boy would be at the arena, tossing a playful smile back at the girl. With a mock-serious tone, he asked if they could continue their delightful little chat later, to which she groaned and told him to get lost, though the grin sneaking onto her face betrayed her irritation. That earned a laugh from the guy and even a rare smirk from the quiet Jedi escorting them to the capital. As he walked off, he couldn't help but throw a cheeky "missin' you already" over his shoulder. She muttered that she hated him, but the smile blooming on her lips said otherwise. Watching them disappear, she stood silently for a beat before heading back into the modest home, where the boy's mother was already tidying up the breakfast mess. As the corridor fills with mechanical tension, Padmé watches in silence while the rust-orange droid Revan's own creation lashes out with clinical contempt at the innocent astromech beside him. Annoyance? "I don't care about your accomplishments on the ship," it sneers, its voice coated in disdain. The exchange grows sharper, each line a jab at utility and weakness, as if battle-worthiness is the only measure of worth. What do you do when fighting begins hide behind the nearest object? It challenges, mocking the little droid's purpose. R2's beeps ring back defiantly, but HK's reply cuts cold. Declaration: "You and all of your utility brethren are a liability in battle." The moment crackles with more than insult. It's a mirror to Revan's inner war. Here, metal mocks mercy, strength demands armor. Yet in this mechanical philosophy hides a warning. If the galaxy only prizes destruction, what becomes of those built to heal? As Ecclesiastes whispers, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. So too does the soul of the machine question the path of the maker. With a metallic sneer and crimson-lit eyes, the droid scoffs at the sentimental creation of his young master, prompting an indignant cry from the grease-smeared boy who slams open the door like a miniature thunderstorm. He defends his companion, not a warrior but a diplomat of wires and etiquette, declaring him more than a burden, a symbol of care. The droid replies with barbed irony, feigning gratitude for such a guardian in a desert of threats. Yet the boy, brushing away danger with a certainty only innocence can afford, declares the raiders of the dunes more strategic than savage, bound by fear of greater powers. In this comic ballet of mockery and pride, something deeper pulses. The tension between machine logic and human belief, between the cold code of protection and the warm defiance of hope. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future, said Galadriel once, and here, under the twin suns, a boy dares to believe just that. Revan smirked, earning a groan from his keeper. Come on, who do you think he's really backing? He teased, shooting a glance at the Jedi Master. Qui-Gon, ever the skeptic, eyed the Toydarian. Why place your credits on Sebulba instead of Anakin? He asked. If your slave wins, you'd get the prize legally, wouldn't you? But the Toydarian just cackled, eyes twinkling with smugness. Sebulba always wins, Outlander. That's why I'm all in. Revan, quiet for a beat, then replied coolly, I'll take that bet. Do you like this personality? What was that? The question crackled in the tense silence, eyes narrowing like blades in the dark. The girl had heard something beneath his breath, something unsaid but heavy. He laughed dry, nervous, confessing he never even finished a race, and in that moment, the illusion shattered. Padmé felt the weight of galaxies pressed down, the fate of her people gambled on a broken podracer and a boy whose victories lived only in dreams. Meanwhile, the Jedi walked calmly beside Revan, who asked the kind of question that slips between the folds of time. Can I ask you something about the Force? They walked through the sand as if following echoes, not streets. Beneath the sun's glare, doubt flickered in Ki. Gon's gaze, was this the will of the Force, or a blind leap into myth? As if whispered from an ancient scripture, the moment asked, do you now believe? Tatooine, once a detour, now loomed like a prophecy, uncoiling where destinies were wagered like dice, and even the wise feared who would throw next. As the sand whispers of destiny coiled tighter around them, the boy with storm-gray eyes asked the question that has haunted mystics for millennia. Can minds truly touch across silence? The robed teacher, voice worn like his boots, nods not toward himself, but toward a figure cloaked in legend, the Grand Master whose wisdom outlives empires. No one knows the Force better, he says, his words bending under the weight of centuries. The boy's voice, curious but guarded, utters the ancient name as if testing a prophecy. Telepathy. He wonders not just hearing thoughts, but feeling truth and torment raw in the soul. The Master's answer is less about technique and more about faith. Some abilities aren't taught, they're remembered. As they step aside from a passing vehicle, dust swirls like a veil between old beliefs and a new awakening. In this world, where even silence echoes, the idea that one's spirit might call out and be answered feels less like power and more like burden. As it is written, for now we see through a glass, darkly, but then face to face. As the desert wind curled around them like a serpent whispering fate, the boy looked up and questioned the Jedi, drawing his gaze down with solemn weight. All Jedi can feel emotions, came the reply, low reflective. The Force doesn't isolate. It connects everything, from the meekest blade of grass to kings cloaked in power. There was a pause, a truth almost too dangerous to speak. It makes us strong, but it could be our undoing. And then, like a verse stolen from a holy book and rearranged by firelight, Revan murmured, emotion, yet peace. The words danced just outside the known Jedi code, cracked open like a sacred tablet struck by lightning. Qui-Gon, startled, asked him to repeat it, sensing something ancient woven in the syllables, but Revan dismissed it with a wave, nothing. Yet in that silence was everything. It was as if the boy had glimpsed behind the veil and returned not with answers, but with riddles, a prophet too young to carry his own gospel. The heart has its reasons which reason knows nothing of, said Pascal, and here, In the sweltering stillness of Tatooine, the Jedi began to wonder if the code they cherished was built to withstand boys like Revan. As the conversation unfolds beneath the twin suns, a haunting familiarity lingers in Revan's mind, a phrase he's sure he's heard before, yet its origin slips through memory like sand and wind. The line, eerily reminiscent of the Jedi code, "There is no emotion, there is peace," is met not with reverence, but a sharp scoff. Why reject emotion, he challenges, when it is precisely what separates soul from circuitry? Even HK, the metal sentinel of his past, cannot erase the truth. Emotions are the language of choice, of sacrifice, of love. Yet Padmé counters with quiet conviction, emotion unchecked is the gateway to the dark. But Revan sees the cracks in her certainty. "You don't believe that," he says, not as accusation, but revelation. The Force doesn't just bind all things, it exposes the doubts we dare not name. In this clash of ideals, they echo something deeper. The heart has its reasons, which reason knows not. And perhaps, like all prophecy, the truth is not found in denial, but in the balance between passion and peace. Qui-Gon tilted his head, eyes narrowing under the weight of something unspoken. "Just a feeling," Revan murmured, his voice caught between defiance and dread. But the old Jedi wasn't satisfied. "So you mean to say that you Jedi live an emotionless existence? Decades or centuries, in Yoda's case of feeling nothing?" Revan's retort came swift, cutting through the silence like a blade. "I never said that." And with that, the air seemed to tighten. He wasn't defending the code, he was warning of its cost. Revan had seen what happened when Jedi opened themselves to hatred. It didn't rush in like a storm, it crept, slow and unrelenting, until the heart it touched became unrecognizable. "I've seen it," he said, not with fear but with mourning. "They fall and never rise the same." Hatred, that old dark ember, isn't just a strong emotion, it's a distortion of love, twisted by fear and pride. As if echoing ancient scripture, "Beware the heart, for it is deceitful above all things." Revan's words rang with the weary knowledge of someone who had watched angels slip into shadow. As the desert wind carries whispered truths, Revan's question lingers. What about love, compassion, joy, friendship, fear? And the ancient warning echoes back. Fear leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. But even this chain of darkness, Qui-Gon warns, is not so easily broken, for the Force doesn't bend to wishes, it responds to will. The quiet exchange between these two isn't just debate, it's the collision of faith and foresight, as one speaks from prophecy and the other from doctrine. And then, a deeper revelation slips through. Force bond. Not mere telepathy, but a sacred tether forged in shared trials, resonant only between those who are both force-sensitive and emotionally bound. A master and their student, a dreamer and a queen, a boy and the galaxy's weight. "We are all connected," the old master said, "but only some dare to listen." In this moment, the comic veers toward mystery. Are these bonds, blessings, or burdens sent to test the soul? As the crowds thickened around the arena, Qui-Gon's pace was steady, but Revan's words made time stutter. He had heard Padmé's thoughts, felt her longing like heat off sun-baked stone, and when he spoke to her without words, she answered in kind. The Jedi Master halted, stone-faced and skeptical, asking if it had been a dream. Revan's frown deepened not out of defiance, but because the memory had weight, as real as sand underfoot. This wasn't fantasy, it was resonance, as if the Force itself had cracked open a secret channel between two spirits. Like ancient prophets who spoke of visions not understood in their time, Revan now stood at the edge of something vast and unspeakable. "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase," said King once, and here, in this desert crossroads of fate, Revan had taken that step, while the Orders still searched for the stairs. Before he even stepped into the room, their thoughts were already colliding in silence, two minds intertwined by a force bond neither fully understood nor trusted. The moment the Jedi crossed the threshold, he caught the tail end of their out-loud conversation, sharp as sand in the wind. The renegade Jedi confirmed what he heard, eyes narrowed with suspicion. But the boy scarred by truths too heavy for his age didn't flinch. He warned them not to dismiss him so easily, not with that name, not with that tone. "Don't Revan me," he growled, a line thick with rebellion and exhaustion. And then, like sunlight breaking through the storm, he smirked not out of amusement, but defiance. "She had gotten flustered," he said. when questioned about why she, not a soldier, was chosen to guard a queen. Her response? A list of victories, like medals on a chain she wasn't ready to let go of. But beneath the surface of that playful tension lies something stranger, a cosmic riddle wrapped in silence. Were their thoughts really private, or had the Force always intended to unveil them? Like the proverb says, the truth will set you free, but first it will make you furious. She's too proud for a servant, he says, but there's more to it. Her gaze is steady, her posture too practiced, and when she speaks, something slips, a half-truth wrapped in hesitation. The renegade notices it all, though he pretends not to. He already knows who she is, but lets the masquerade play on like a test of wills. She's hiding something, Revan mutters, eyes narrowing. Not with suspicion, but understanding. Pride isn't the flaw here, it's the veil. And Naboo? It's a world where roles are worn like silk, elegant, deceptive, and utterly fragile. She doesn't act like a servant, he continues, as if trying to convince himself the illusion still holds. But truth, like the Force, bends only for so long before it fractures. And so, without waiting for answers, they stride through the hangar where destinies rust beneath twin suns, and the Force waits silent, but watching. Even the truth, as Solzhenitsyn wrote, is often stranger than fiction. Inside the cavernous hangar, where shadows clung to metal like omens, engines growled in slumber, and alien tongues tangled in the dust-choked air, a sacred chaos before the storm of Boonta Eve. The renegade, cloaked in dust and secrets, strode beside the child bound by fate, only to be confronted by a winged traitor who reeked of desperation and spoiled victory. The bargain is sealed, hissed the creature, his rot-toothed grin close enough to test a Jedi's restraint. But the desert wind carried no fear in the Jedi Master's voice, only calm conviction. Patience, he breathed, you'll have your winnings. Beneath this exchange simmered something more, not barter, but destiny disguised as trade. It wasn't just a race, but a reckoning, an altar built on engines where freedom and futures would be cast like dice. And as ancient texts remind us, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? The Force trembled not from ships or shouts, but from a quiet truth. Nothing in this hangar would ever be the same again. Watto let out a snorting laugh, the kind that oozed suspicion rather than joy, and barked a warning, no funny business. But the cloaked figure, veiled in Jedi calm, walked on, unfazed his silence, a carefully crafted lure, a hook meant to stir the Toydarian's pride. Watto took the bait, his voice rising with disbelief. You don't think Anakin will win? The reply came not from the Jedi, but from a voice sharper than Tatooine wind. Revan, silent till now, cut in with biting clarity. Meet Sebulba's #1 fan. That jab struck, and Watto's temper flared, snarling back, watch your tone, boy! Yet Revan stood his ground. The moment charged with something more than sarcasm. In that charged air, we glimpse a deeper truth. This isn't just a wager, it's a divine trial cloaked as sport, a crossroad cloaked in sand. The child, the droid, the Jedi, the gambler, each unknowingly dancing to the rhythm of a force far older than them all. As it is written, the lot is cast into the lap, but every decision is from the Lord. Proverbs 16:33. Here, even dice and doubt carry the weight of destiny. Revan grinned, provoking a groan from his weary companion before glancing up at the Jedi with a spark of mischief. Besides, who do you think he's betting on? The Jedi blinked, puzzled. Why Sebulba and not the boy? The winged merchant tilted his head, mock surprise twisting his features. Surely you'd back your own servant, any winnings would fall to you by law. No? But the merchant burst into laughter, pride dripping from every word. Sebulba always wins, Offworlder. That's why I'm putting everything on him. The Jedi's eyes narrowed. Then I'll take that bet. Watto and Revan both shouted in disbelief as Qui-Gon dared to bet against the boy, his voice calm but charged with consequence. He offered up his sleek new podracer gleaming with silent promise, then paused, letting the silence grow heavy. Watto's wings buzzed furiously when Qui-Gon coolly proposed trading it for the boy and his mother. Outraged, the dealer shot forward, scandalized at the notion of exchanging one machine for 2 lives. 1 slave, maybe, but 3? His pride flared like Tatooine's twin sons, refusing to be played so cheaply in a game rigged by destiny. As the coarse wind of Tatooine hisses through rusted vendor stalls, Revan steps forward with the quiet fury of a brother chained not by metal, but by fate. His voice cuts the air. Anakin is small, he says, not pleading but calculating, eyes fixed on Watto like a gambler ready to fold his life away. He struggles with weight can't be worth much. Yet Watto, unmoved, simply shakes his head twice, as if brushing sand off a table. Then comes the silence before sacrifice. Revan, jaw clenched, offers what no boy should his prized HK droid, his only creation, his only protector. He doesn't say it aloud, but the truth stings in the desert air. Freedom for Anakin may cost him everything. It's the kind of choice whispered in holy books. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And in that quiet trade, the Force quivers not just because a bond is broken, but because destiny once again pivots in the dust of a forgotten world. The Toydarian blinked in disbelief, his wings twitching as he stared at the robed boy who stood without flinching, emotionless on the surface, yet radiating tension like heat off metal. "You're what?" he barked. "Your hunter assassination droid," came the calm reply, as if the words were mundane, yet they cut through the dusty air like a blade. The merchant's brow furrowed, calculating. A droid that obeyed without question, that could serve as translator, servant, and guardian? It was like gaining a knight and a bookkeeper in one stroke. But then the boy, the slave, was his best worker. Yet HK, this cold sentinel of obedience, would never sleep, never disobey, never dream. The silence dragged, thick with consequence. Revan stood firm, offering up his creation, his only constant in a galaxy of shifting truths for the freedom of another. The Force trembled, as if witnessing a turning point written in the stars. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, some ancient voice seemed to echo. But Revan chose the opposite, sacrificing power, not for glory, but for a child's chance to fly. As the scorching winds of Tatooine whispered of shifting fates, the moment hung heavy. Qui-Gon's solemn voice shattered Revan's thoughts. "Do we have a deal?" And there it was, the fragile hinge of destiny, waiting on the lips of a Toydarian with sand-crusted wings and a heart full of bartered chains. The answer came, "We have a deal." A spit-stained handshake sealed more than a contracted, unraveled prophecy. The boy, burdened by invisible servitude, was now promised freedom, and Revan, hiding a flicker of triumph, held his silence beneath the shadow of his master. But when asked of the others still bound, the merchant's shrug cut deeper than a blade. "What about them?" he sneered, clinging to a machine and its false promise of fortune. And in that pause, the Force itself seemed to recoil. Like Ecclesiastes once whispered, all is vanity and a chasing after wind, for even liberation came laced with loss. Revan had gambled away his only creation for a chance at light, but in doing so, witnessed a world where compassion, costs, and justice always arrives late. As the dying sons of Tatooine cast long shadows over shifting destinies, the Jedi grapples with a revelation that cuts deeper than any lightsaber. Anakin, like Revan, is not merely born but placed, carved into prophecy by unseen hands. And now, with Revan's aid, he's freed the boy, though freedom itself comes at a price heavier than blood. Qui-Gon's resolve trembles, knowing that both boys, one aflame with Force visions, the other marked by an unnatural bond to the Force, must be brought before the Grandmasters, not just for training, but for answers only the old order dares utter. Yet fate, as ever, refuses simplicity. A gambler's cube dances in a junk dealer's fingers, a holy relic in a profane place. Its color to decide who walks in light and who remains in chains. Red, the mother; blue, the boy. And like proverbs whispered into desert wind, it is said, the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. As the cube clatters to the hangar floor, a silent verdict echoes through the desert air chants and sacrifice collide. So ends another intense chapter of the return of the Prodigal Knight and the Phantom Menace. Revan, no longer just a gifted outcast, trades away HK, his first creation, his most loyal companion to free Anakin. It's a moment that cuts deep, showing there's nothing he wouldn't risk for his fractured family. The Force shivers at this exchange, and questions rise like dust in the Tatooine wind. Destiny, loyalty, and prophecy twist tighter. While Padmé's growing connection to Revan becomes more than emotion, it's something ancient, something shared. As Revan's eyes reflect a storm only he seems to see, one can't help but wonder, will Anakin follow his own light, or is he bound to shadows yet unseen?